Welcome to Lengua Franca. This is the third in a three-part series on the verb gustar, and it is meant for those who have studied Spanish all the way to the intermediate level. In the previous videos in this series, we looked at the construction of this wacky verb and learned some of its primos. In this video, we will do a bit of review and then move on to different verbs that also work like gustar. As a refresher, let's look at the construction of gustar and similar verbs. If you recall, gustar and verbs that work like it all have an inverted sentence structure. The subject goes after the verb, not before it, and there is always an indirect object present, be it in pronoun form only or the full phrase added in. We have a similar phrase. Not for to like, rather for to be pleasing to someone. And it is that phrase that we use to describe gustar and its meaning in Spanish. We also learned in part 2 of this series that there are a number of primos to gustar. These are verbs that work exactly like gustar in every way. In fact, these verbs have a label, psychological verbs or psych verbs. All of these verbs involve psychological processes that affect someone. They all require indirect objects, and they use the same construction as gustar. We also noted that aburrir and quedar can work like gustar, which is why they are on this list, but they have other uses that we have seen in previous videos. Well, it turns out that there are a few more verbs that are of the same type as gustar in that they are all psychological processes. These verbs tend to be learned at the intermediate level and certainly are used at a higher level of Spanish. But in each case, they work exactly like gustar with the same construction being used. Just like with aburrir and quedar, there are other verbs that can use this construction, given the right context. Caer in particular has this connotation that you get along with someone. It is an idiomatic expression for Spanish that has no exact translation, to fall well or poorly to someone, but translates to what you see here. Dar asco, in many ways, is the same as disgustar, but it has perhaps an even stronger feeling of giving someone disgust, a very strong phrase, to be sure. The same is true for any of the verbs that denote emotions or states of being. They can all be used in this construction to mean that someone is causing happiness, tiredness, anger, etc., in another person. For both of these groups, in order to use these connotations, simply use the same gustar-like construction for each one. And as a reminder of our friend, the subjunctive, psych verbs by their very nature are emotive verbs. They convey aspects of emotion and therefore are triggers for subjunctive. Every last one of them is a trigger for subjunctive. Well, all but one. Parecer is the lone exception to this rule. Basically, it refers to an observation, and in this way works more like creer than pensar. With that, we have completed our series on gustar and its primos, the other psych verbs that have such an unusual construction in Spanish. Please like this video and leave any comments or questions that you have. Don't forget to subscribe to Lengua Franca's YouTube channel, which has more videos on Spanish grammar and much more. Oh, and please check out our Patreon page if you are at all interested in supporting us in our work. Hasta pronto. Adiós.